Leonor's destiny written by law. The light inside the palace is pale and deliberate, filtered through centuries of stone and protocol. A young figure stands still, framed not by family warmth, but by architecture designed to outlast generations. Every step echoes. Every silence carries weight. This is not a fairy tale inheritance. It is a legal condition. A structure written long before memory, enforced long after sentiment fades. The subject is Princess Leonor of Spain, Princess of Asturias. But even that title is not personal. It is procedural. Long before Princess Leonor of Spain could choose her dreams, the law had already chosen her destiny. In Spain, continuity is not symbolic. It is constitutional. The crown does not wait for readiness. It asserts itself through law, ritual, and expectation. The Spanish Constitution does not ask who Leonor wants to become. It defines who she must be. Succession here is not emotional inheritance. It is statutory transfer. From the moment her status was formalized, her future narrowed. Not because of malice, but because institutions survive by removing uncertainty. This is the living thread of continuity. National identity is woven into these rituals. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. At public ceremonies, the precision is intentional. Uniforms are exact. Language is restrained. Every gesture signals permanence. Yet the quiet tension lies beneath what is never said aloud. Because the modern world asks a dangerous question of old institutions. Can a future be legally assigned before a life has even begun? By minute 2, the illusion begins to crack. What appears as honor is also containment. What looks like privilege is also restriction. The monarchy is not raising a daughter. It is maintaining a system. Spain's allies understand this. In Washington, the continuity of the Spanish crown is read not as romance, but as stability. In London, it is recognized as a familiar calculus, duty before desire, institution before individual. In Ottawa and Canberra, the question is quieter, but present: does constitutional monarchy still produce legitimacy in a democratic age? In Berlin, the gaze is analytical, shaped by history's warnings about inherited authority. None of them ask what Leonor feels. They ask whether the structure will hold. Because what was sealed was not her childhood. It was Spain's future narrative. Every oath she will take is already drafted. Every speech is bounded by precedent. Even silence, here, is choreographed. There is something deliberately unspoken in all of this. A controlled absence. No one publicly discusses what happens if the law and the person diverge. Because institutions do not like hypotheticals that threaten continuity. By minute 8, the deeper mystery emerges. Not whether Leonor will ascend, but what version of the monarchy will survive long enough to receive her. Spain has changed. The Constitution has not. This is where tension gathers. Quietly, legally. At the midpoint, the strain becomes visible, not dramatic, but structural. Public expectations evolve faster than legal frameworks. Symbolic unity is asked to carry social diversity. And the crown absorbs it all. There is a moment every institution reaches when reversal is no longer possible. When preparation becomes inevitability. By minute 14, that point is reached. Not announced. Felt. From this moment forward, every appearance reinforces inevitability. Every absence raises questions. Every neutral expression is interpreted. The law does not bend easily. That is its strength. And its risk. In global capitals, the future is discussed cautiously. No one predicts collapse. But no one assumes permanence either. Because history teaches that institutions rarely fall from rebellion alone, they erode from misalignment. At minute 19, the foreshadowing is clear. Not a scandal, not a crisis, but a pressure, slow, rational, constitutional. A future moment where law and lived reality may no longer align effortlessly. And still, the system advances. Calm, measured, because the crown's primary instinct is survival. Not happiness, not fulfillment. The words return not as a warning, but as a condition. Princess Leonor stands at the edge of a future already written, yet not fully tested. The law has done its work. History has not finished its response. And somewhere ahead, unseen, undecided, the institution will discover whether destiny, once sealed by law, can still adapt to the world it must govern. The training does not announce itself as training. It arrives disguised as routine, as obligation, as normality carefully engineered to feel inevitable. For Princess Leonor of Spain, the day is divided not by preference, but by preparation. Education is not enrichment here. It is calibration. Languages are not learned for curiosity. They are acquired for diplomacy. History is not studied for reflection. It is memorized for continuity. This is how institutions protect themselves. They do not rush. They condition. At first glance, it looks modern. International schooling, military formation, public appearances carefully spaced to avoid saturation. But beneath the surface, the logic is ancient. Remove unpredictability. Standardize succession. Reduce the human variable. The monarchy does not ask whether the role fits the person. It reshapes the person to fit the role. Here is the first quiet contradiction. Spain presents a young future head of state to the public, composed, disciplined, prepared. Yet that very composure is evidence of something else. Constraint. By minute 2 of this chapter, the audience realizes what is rarely stated openly. The law does not merely name an heir. It actively manages a life. Every institution claims neutrality, but neutrality, when enforced early enough, becomes destiny. This is the living thread of continuity. National identity is woven into these rituals. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. Public ceremonies reinforce this message without ever declaring it. The heir stands alone more often than beside peers. Not out of isolation, out of symbolism. The image must suggest permanence, not youth. Stability, not exploration. International observers notice this immediately. In the United States, analysts frame it as discipline, evidence that the Spanish monarchy understands succession as governance, not spectacle. In the United Kingdom, the pattern feels familiar, almost inherited across borders, the slow conversion of a child into an institution. Canada and Australia read it pragmatically, a monarchy that still keeps order by controlling narrative. Germany watches with distance, noting how law substitutes for popular mandate. None of them ask whether this produces happiness. They ask whether it produces reliability. And reliability is the currency of power. At minute 5, the phrase returns, not as drama, but as fact. Not by prophecy, by statute. The seal does not tighten suddenly. It tightens gradually, invisibly, until movement feels unnecessary. There is a deeper silence here, one that surrounds the idea of refusal. Constitutions rarely plan for dissent from within. They assume compliance. Spain's legal framework is elegant in its clarity. Succession is automatic. Expectation is absolute. But modern legitimacy is no longer automatic. It must be renewed, generation by generation. This is where the tension deepens. Not spoken, but felt. At minute 8, the unresolved question sharpens. Can an institution built on inevitability still command consent in an age defined by choice? No official statement answers this. Because answering it would acknowledge uncertainty. By the midpoint of this chapter, preparation begins to resemble rehearsal. Not for a coronation. For endurance. Military training is not symbolic. It is constitutional signaling. The crown aligns itself with the state, not society. The message is subtle but precise. This authority is structural. It does not depend on affection. And yet, public affection is not irrelevant. It is simply managed. The system advances carefully, knowing that legitimacy today is watched, measured, compared. Every appearance is weighed not against tradition, but against relevance. And still, the law remains unchanged. Unmoved by commentary, unresponsive to speculation, because law, once written to protect continuity, rarely adapts quickly enough to protect meaning. By minute 14, another threshold is crossed. Expectation hardens into assumption, assumption into narrative. There is no longer discussion of, if, only, when. From this point forward, absence would speak louder than presence. Deviation louder than silence. The institution has reached the stage where turning back would create more instability than continuing forward. That is the true point of no return. And beyond it lies the unanswered future, not of a person, but of a system preparing to test whether destiny, sealed by law, can still survive the modern world's demand for choice. Visibility changes everything. Once preparation becomes public, it stops being protective and starts being declarative. For Princess Leonor of Spain, the institution no longer hides behind distance. It introduces her deliberately, incrementally, into the national field of view. Not too much, never impulsively, always enough to signal inevitability. Public speeches are short, words are selected for neutrality, not inspiration. Emotion is permitted only in controlled quantities. Because this phase is not about connection. It is about calibration between law and perception. Here, the crown tests the atmosphere. Not whether she is accepted, but how acceptance is expressed. Applause is measured. Criticism is monitored. Silence is analyzed most carefully of all. This is the stage where continuity becomes a performance, not theatrical, but procedural. This is the living thread of continuity. National identity is woven into these rituals. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. And presence carries consequence. By minute 2 of this chapter, the audience senses a shift. The air is no longer shielded by abstraction. She is now subject to interpretation. Every appearance becomes a data point. Every gesture invites reading. The institution understands this danger well. It responds with restraint. No interviews that invite spontaneity. No moments that allow deviation from tone. Because deviation introduces doubt, and doubt weakens inevitability. Internationally, the calculus tightens. In the United States, visibility is framed as transparency, proof that the monarchy understands democratic optics. In the United Kingdom, the process feels familiar, the careful unveiling of a future sovereign before the moment of transfer. Canada and Australia observe with professional curiosity, attentive to whether symbolism still translates across distance. Germany watches for signals of adaptation, not tradition. None of these observers debate the legality of succession. They debate its sustainability. At minute 5, the phrase returns again, unchanged, unsoftened. Now it carries a different weight. Not origin, trajectory. Because once the public has been conditioned to see continuity, removing it becomes destabilizing. There is a deeper tension beneath the composure. The institution must now protect not only the future monarch, but the narrative surrounding her. Narratives, unlike laws, are fragile. By minute 8, something subtle becomes apparent. The crown is no longer only preparing Leonor for the role. It is preparing the country for permanence. This requires control, not coercive, but cultural. Symbols repeated, language standardized, even absence is used strategically. Visibility is withheld as often as it is granted. The mystery is intentional. Too much familiarity dissolves authority. At the midpoint, the strain surfaces quietly. A modern public expects authenticity. Institutions offer consistency. These two values are not naturally aligned. The monarchy answers not by changing the law, but by refining presentation. By appearing modern without becoming flexible. This is a delicate balance. One misstep would not threaten succession. It would threaten credibility. By minute 14, the pressure is unmistakable. Every appearance now carries institutional consequence. From this point, neutrality is no longer safe. It is simply the least risky option. The law remains immovable, but perception is not, and perception, once shifted, cannot be legislated back into place. This is where the future risk begins to take shape, not as rebellion, not as rejection, but as disengagement. A quiet distance between institution and public expectation. The crown moves forward regardless. Because stopping would acknowledge vulnerability. And so the system continues, carefully advancing toward a moment it cannot rehearse, when destiny, long sealed by law, must finally be lived under the full weight of public consent. Time does not announce its turning points. Institutions feel them before history records them. For Princess Leonor of Spain, the future now exists in a narrow corridor, shaped by precedent, guarded by law, watched by a world that measures stability more than sentiment. There is no visible rebellion here. No rupture. That is precisely the point. The Spanish monarchy does not fail loudly. If it ever falters, it does so quietly, through misalignment rather than collapse. The law has done what it was designed to do. It has removed uncertainty. It has guaranteed succession. It has sealed continuity against emotion, preference, and delay. But law cannot legislate meaning. In Washington, the calculation remains pragmatic. Continuity equals reliability. In London, the pattern is understood instinctively, duty carried forward regardless of cost. Canada and Australia watch for signals, not statements, reading symbolism as a measure of endurance. Germany remains cautious, aware that legitimacy today is sustained, not inherited. Across all of them, one truth is shared. Stability must now perform. This is the final tension. Not whether the crown will pass, but whether it will still command relevance when it does. Because continuity, once automatic, now requires consent. Not written, felt. The institution stands firm, as it always has. Unemotional, prepared, and at its center stands a future sovereign shaped less by choice than by necessity. Not as a sentence, as a condition. What comes next will not be decided by ceremony alone, nor by law in isolation. It will be tested in the space between tradition and expectation, where history pauses, and the future has not yet agreed to comply. The crown is ready. The law is clear. The only uncertainty that remains is whether continuity, once secured by statute, can still earn its place in the world that awaits it.